Hello, Vidhi. Just a sound check. Can you just confirm that I'm audible?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I see.
Okay, great.
Sir, we'll wait for a few minutes to let people join. Start.
Yes, of course, please. Sure.
Shall we start? Mr. Anthony, sir, Ranveer, sir.
I mean, it's okay. If you want to start, we can start and let others join in. I'm open for waiting as well.
Good evening, everybody. I would like Ms. Brinda to start the session.
Am I audible properly?
Yes.
Good evening, panelists, my fellow members and participants. I'm Brinda, a junior core member at the Students for the Promotion of International Law, and I, on the behalf of SPIL, am pleased to welcome you to the panel discussion. Students for the Promotion of International Law, SPIL Mumbai, is a student-run committee based in Government Law College, Mumbai. At SPIL Mumbai, we strive towards taking legal studies to an empirical level and promoting law as an area of inquiry and study far beyond the realms of classrooms. This panel discussion embodies the spirit of knowledge, awareness, through the session of intense inquisition among the panelists. This year, the theme of panel discussion is metaverse. The topic chosen is legal considerations in metaverse and the digital future. The metaverse is a hypothetical iteration of internet as a single universal and immersive virtual world that is facilitated by the use of virtual reality and augmented reality. Legal issues concerning the intellectual property infringement, cybersecurity, and consumer rights have come to a front. As noted, metaverse is expected to develop in the future, having the potential to have a significant impact on our lives. Metaverse has both the potential to do ultimate good and also to wreak havoc. Thus, this calls into question the various legal issues to examine one of the highly discussed topics of late, that is the metaverse. We request everyone to turn on their cameras, keep their mics muted throughout the session. Without further ado, we would now like to introduce our stellar panelists to the audience. Our first panelist for today is Dr. Ranbir Basu. Mr. Ranbir Basu is legal director at Mondelez. He has an experience of over 20 years and has worked in companies such as Unilever, Sandoz, Dr. Reddy's, GlaxoSmithKline. He is an alumnus of Calcutta University and National Law School, Bangalore. He has been awarded a Certificate of Achievement in Microeconomics from MIT. Our second panelist for the day is Mr. Alvin Anthony. Mr. Alvin Anthony is currently working as an associate at the Sujata Chaudhary IP Attorneys, Noida. He has pursued BA LLB IP honors from National Law University, Jodhpur. He has completed PG diploma in cyber law from Nalsar University of Law. His current practice majorly consists of litigation, enforcement, and involves trademark oppositions and rectifications. He has an avid interest in legal issues surrounding new media such as metaverse, crypto, and NFTs. Our third panelist of the day is Pavan Duggal. Dr. Pavan Duggal is practicing as an advocate in the Supreme Court of India over 2 decades. He is the founder and chairman of International Commission on Cyber Security Law. He is also the president of cyberlaws.net and has been working in the am I audible? Area of cyber law, cyber security law, and mobile law. He is also the president of Cyber Law Asia. While practicing advocate at the Supreme Court of India, Dr. Duggal has made an immense impact with the international reputation as an expert and authority on cyber law, cybersecurity law, and e-commerce law. He has been acknowledged as one of the top 4 cyber lawyers around the world. He is currently not in the meeting with right now, but he will be joining shortly. Now I would like to hand over it to Prajwal. Prajwal, would you like to take over?
Thank you, Vrinda. So let's begin with the opening statements of panelists. I would request Mr. Anthony to begin with his opening statement.
Hey, good evening all. So thank you for inviting me for this panel discussion on a very important topic that is being uh, in the market and it's very trending. So if you are looking into any jurisdiction, not only in India but like mostly in Western jurisdiction, the concept of metaverse is like going like in a bigger scale, even for like looking into the Middle East, even like looking in Dubai and everywhere. The concept has like grown immense importance in the way that market functions and everything. It is changing the way the industry has been traditionally running for like long term and everything. So it is important for us to like look into the entire concept and understand, because it is possible that we might need a change in regime, as in like the change in laws, how we interpret the laws and everything, in order to like fit the concept. Because the in my understanding, the law is not evolving in a fast pace in order to cope up with the technology that is being developed. A lot of countries are seeing a lot of issues because there is no law to analyze the questions that is arising because of the new technology, and in order to understand how what is the implication on the people and how it has to be like kept like going forward, whether there should be a strict answer and everything. So today's discussion, I think we'll be able to like come up with some ideas, ideologies, maybe possible solutions. Everything can be coming into the picture. Let's see how it is going to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony. I would request all the participants to please mute their mic. Mr. Ranveer Basu, would you like to proceed?
Yes, thank you much. Thank you very much. Just a quick audio check. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great, great. So first of all, let me just start off by thanking you for giving me the opportunity to come and speak to you all. I did receive some of the questions which we might be, discussing just, as a sheer interest of the students. And I can already tell you that I did not have all the answers. I don't know whether the others would have, but it just shows how extremely bright you all are as students of the law. We are also students of the law, and I think it is questions like these, discussions as these, which help us learn together. And while we are students of law at the end of the day, what I would like to share with you all and bring to the table is a slightly different corporate angle. Since I work for Cadbury's or Mondelez, as you know it, um, um, I would like to bring to the table of how companies as ours, the FMCG, are looking at concepts as metaverse. Yes, I totally agree with Anthony. This concept has been around for a while, but over the last, say, 2 years or so, there's been some kind of an explosion somewhere. And that may have started with Facebook turning their name to Meta and creating all the buzz. So it's a very exciting time, and we will go through many of the questions which you would be having in mind. Do forgive me if I don't have answers to all of them. I will be heavily relying on the other panelists to answer many of them as well. But before I kind of throw it back to you, I would just like to kind of go through a few things. So one is, so how do corporates look at metaverse? So as you know, companies, when it's all about business, right? And when we are talking about business, there are a couple of angles or factors which we take into consideration. One, probably the most important for most companies, is how can we make profit out of something? So this is always going to be uh, the, top on priority for all companies. And as we move from the real world to the internet world, and now to an immersive world in the metaverse, companies are definitely looking at making money, making profit in various different ways. So we will talk a little bit about that, and do throw in your questions at any point in time. Second is, if we are not making money, what else can we do? And that's what which brings in the second part of the conversation, which is engagement. That is where the new generation comes in. You see, when I'm doing a project for my company in non-fungible tokens and metaverse, and as part of that, we did a little bit of a dipstick into understand who are the users of this metaverse, who actually look at things like non-fungible tokens and cryptocurrencies. Is it all about investment? And that's when we realized that the main users of concepts such as metaverse and platforms are an extremely inquisitive group between 18 to 35. And that is very interesting because on one hand you have people who with a high disposable income, so they can experiment, and on the other hand you have people closer towards the 18 age group cohort who are very, very inquisitive to try and experiment, just like yourselves. So this is very, very important as we go through the discussions, that who is our audience, who are the spectators, who are watching this space. That age group is a very niche age group. So that's one thing.
I would like them to be nominated for.
Sorry, did I miss something? Was there a question?
Sorry.
No, sir. I think it was just an interruption.
Okay, no worries, no worries. And yeah, so that's some of the, that is something which we'll have to keep in mind. And the third part which we've seen is, the metaverse in many ways, and I'll keep this probably for later in the discussion. There can be a very benevolent angle to it as well, where you can do things on the metaverse for charity. So, I will pause there and hand it back over to you. I don't exactly know how much of it I'm supposed to cover during the opening statement. But look, there are a lot of interesting things which there are to share. I will do it as we go through this conversation. But that's just one thing which I wanted to share with you in the opening, that it's been there, but it's gaining more importance. There is a very niche group of audience which is watching this space, and of course, there are various uses of the metaverse. Back to you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. We'll begin with the questions. In the first round, I will ask the questions, and in the second round, we will take the questions put forward by the audience. My first question will be to Mr. Anthony. Since there's a lot of legal issues surrounding the IPR, the first question is, who owns the copyright, patent, or trademark to something produced by an artificial intelligence inside or outside the meta?
Well, that's a very interesting question, actually. In fact, today morning only I had a word with Mr. Ankit Saini. So, a couple of you might be knowing he was the person who behind this artificial intelligence system known as Rakhav, for which the Indian Copyright Office actually has granted a co-authorship copyright. So, there is a registered copyright. If you go to the copyright website today, also you can see the copyright registered on the name of Mr. Saini and Rakhav, which is an artificial intelligence platform. So once this artificial intelligence comes into a platform like a metaverse world, the questions that we have to ask is from the very basic level. So as Mr. Vasu have correctly mentioned, metaverse was there from like a very long time. Like if you must have read that from 1919 onwards, 1992 actually the term was coined. Then thereafter 1999, if you are looking into the USPTO, there are the particular term was like registered from 1999. A lot of countries there is metaverse being registered and everything. Even in if you're looking into the Indian trademark registry or like that, there are a lot of people who has already have the right over the term metaverse. Now the second part it comes into is like when you're analyzing the world inside the metaverse. So if you want me to like look into, there are like cases from US, especially one of the cases that I would like to mention is the Epic Games versus Apple Inc., which was the one of the first time the court analyzed what is this entire concept of metaverse. This is from New York District of California, which said that it is like whether there is what are the implications of what you're doing in real life in the metaverse. So there is, yes, there are implications of both the things. And for asking like analyzing the questions and everything, the case laws that may help us is from the 2005 to 2010. There was a game called Second Life, which talked about all these issues of who owns the copyright, what are the trademarks when someone is using in the particular trademark in a video game or something like that. So who owns the right, whether there is an infringement, if there is an infringement, who is going to be sued, who has to answer for the issues that is coming into the place and everything. Now, we are combining both artificial intelligence and metaverse, the first question is asking is that whether there is a right in the product that is created by an artificial intelligence. As in, like whether a copyright can be given to a product that is created by an artificial intelligence. I mean, like, to be honest, the situation is like there is no one answer to that, because if you're asking the question from Canada, yes, I will say yes, of course, there is a copyright can be granted. If you are asking from India, you can say like only if there is a co-author human, then you can get the right. But if you are asking the same question from maybe US or maybe from UK, the question will be no, because there needs a human input, and the way you are analyzing the answers of this question will be very different. So yes, the first question, when you are saying that who owns the rights, the first you have to understand is where the jurisdiction is that you are asking the question from, whether it is from India or maybe it's from Canada. Yes, maybe the answer, but if you're asking me from UK, US, EU, or some countries like that, then I would have to say no. As of now, there is no. But while talking with Mr. Sani, what I understand is that there is a possibility of policy change. The lawmakers are really looking into it, because you are looking into a question where multi-billion dollar industry is involved. You look into the Hollywood, you look into the gaming industry, which is a multi-billion dollar industry out there. And all of a sudden, just because of the fact that an AI is involved, you're like removing the rights, which means that the inflow of the industry is going to be restricted. So maybe possibility as of now, when you're asking the question, as I said, from some jurisdiction, I can say it is maybe the AI itself can own the copyright, but in some jurisdiction it cannot. The important thing that we have to understand is that not only the owning of the right, but the utilization of the right. Who is going to benefit from? Who is going to get the income from? So once there is a clarity on who owns the right, then we can have that clarity, and then we may be able to like better give an I'll be able to give a better answer to that. But for now, I have to say it is a mixed response to that. Maybe Mr. Basu can in like add upon this, because he was the person, as you someone must have noted, Cadbury was one of the first adopter of this metaverse concept. They had a virtual date in Mars also. I tried to join, but I was not able to join. So he might need to like he might can give us some impact how industry want it to grow, because the law always revolve around the industry. So let us listen from Mr. Basu how the industry wants it to grow.
Well, thank you very much, Anthony. And if I can build on that, thank you very much. So, it's a very interesting question. And, when as you said, I mean, like, the first thing which corporates would want to do is protect their intellectual property. Okay. So now let's put this into a couple of examples so that we can understand it better. So in the metaverse, let's come back to the point which I was trying to explain. What can I do on the metaverse? Okay. So number one, let's say, for example, I can create actually a shop on the metaverse called a Cadbury shop. Okay. And I can have in some way, I can make that shop the way I want. It's a virtual shop. People can go in there. They can look at my products. Okay, I might, and I'm really, expanding this. I might give them a little bit of a dipstick into what my factory looks like. Okay, what does a chocolate factory look like? So one aspect of this is that I can actually create a shop in the metaverse. Let's say, for example, in Decentraland, where you can go to a Cadbury shop. Now there are some elements of this. Okay, the shop is called Cadbury's. Okay, that is a trademark of mine. That's an IP. I can sell products on metaverse where, let's say, for example, if you buy something with a cryptocurrency, okay, with a cryptocurrency, and I'm for the time being, let's not concentrate on the logistics and the admin of it. We'll come to that later. How can we buy the chocolate? Let's say. So say a person who has a crypto wallet goes and buys a box of Cadbury chocolates. And when he buys this, in some way, he can redeem this box of Cadbury chocolates by, let's say, writing to the company, and then he sent a box of chocolates. Now that is product. Okay. Now when he gets the product, he gets the packaging. Okay. So that is when you're talking about packaging, you're talking about trademarks, and you're also talking about maybe a copyright, okay, in the artwork. Okay. Now let's say, for example, I have a part of the store is, let's say, my colleague Anthony goes in, and while he's shopping in the metaverse, there's that beautiful Cadbury jingle, kiss me, that playing. And let's say, for example, Anthony's avatar wants to listen to that, and then there is copyright in the music, okay, in the lyrics. So what happens as a result of this is automatically you are having an immersive experience in there, by which you are touching upon different intellectual property rights. For the time being, I totally agree with Anthony that there isn't really something specific targeting what is the law for metaverse and stuff like that. What we have been advised and what we have read, again, I come back to say that as a student of law, is that, look, ultimately the gold standards of intellectual property and many other laws will hold good. That is to say, if the brand Cadbury's, okay, or Cadbury Dairy Milk, or the copyright in the song, which is Kiss Me, all these continue to be intellectual property. And now so the law is there. What is yet to be seen is how would I enforce these if this was ever brought to a court of law. Today, the closest example which we have to this is if somebody violated my intellectual property rights on the internet. Now today, because internet is again, it's a world in a network, right? Today you do get enforcement agencies who can go down and pull down, let's say, a website. In the same fashion, we are seeing there are enforcement agencies who can go and pull down an infringing copy of a product or of music, or even it could even be a video game. So the answer to that is, and I'll pause here after this, is that for the time being, the lawyers and the judicial system will fall back on the gold standards of what has already been set out under intellectual property, and we are yet to see how it will be enforced, how it will be appreciated. But for the time being, in that the same approach which we take to intellectual property will apply in the same manner. But we'll have to see how enforcement works. Thank you.
I would like to add one point to what Mr. Basu said, where he is talking about the enforcement uh, of these rights and everything. Like for now, as he correctly pointed out, when it comes to the internet and everything, there are like various agencies that help us to like enforce our rights and everything. But we are looking into a different kind of internet where the immersive experience is so that everything is being decentralized.
Mr. Anthony,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but Dr. Pawan Dugal is here.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, hello, sir.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you just give me 5 minutes? I've just come into the office. I'll just join you in 5 minutes.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Thanks.
Till then, Mr. Anthony, you can continue.
Yeah, please.
Sure. So when it comes to the enforcement point, yes, like we for the rogue websites and everything, we have like a lot of mechanism in India that helps us to like deal with these kind of rogue websites. We have DOT, MEITY, and even ICANN to a certain extent, domain name registrars, which help us to do all these enforcement actions, because the people who has actually created this fake things and doing this kind of I won't say it is a criminal activity, but it is going to be, in a way, it's a criminal activity. But when you're looking into the Web3, there is something on a decentralization, and that is creating a lot of issues, because if you're looking into, there are non-decentralized websites, decentralized domains, which comes into place where none of these authorities really can't have any role to play. They can't have any really control. If you're looking into maybe if you're going in a Web3 browser and you type xyz.eth or xyz.btc, these are decentralized domain names which is not per se controlled by any of these organizations. So, there is an issue of the technology not being developed when it comes to enforcement, and they can't assist us to like certain level. But approaching the court also, the courts are not able to find an answer because there is no real enforcement. So in my understanding, there needs to be a development in the technology, and B, there should be a restriction of like what you can do, because if there is no answer, then you should not be allowed to do something until and unless there is an answer found or a solution is being created. So yes, with that, I think I will leave it here. We can discuss upon it later if someone wants to look into the enforcement.
My next question to Mr. Basu would be, we understand that the consumer is at risk. What are some basic cautions even the newest of consumer of the metaverse is advisable to take?
Okay, thank you for that. So again, th- for the time being, the consumers are being cautioned, again, to follow the standard checkpoints which they would do while they are working also on the internet. So say, for example, um, as a consumer, if I am going into the metaverse and um, undertaking any commercial transaction, uh, to try and ensure that it is a secure website, right? If I so that is fundamental, right? So go for the brands, or go for the platforms which are well known and which have stood the test of time till now. Number one. Number two, there is a lot of activity which is going on metaverse also. So say, for example, you can trade or buy non-fungible tokens. You can engage in cryptocurrencies. You can play video games. You can buy video games. So there is an angle of some amount of financial transactions also. Now that is again where the consumers need to be watchful to see, not just register in any place, left, right, and center. Provide it to see ensure that when they are, for example, trading in cryptocurrencies, or nowadays even there are some platforms where you can use your credit card information and the platform converts the credit card information into cryptocurrencies, that these are secure. So this security is a very big thing at this point in time. Second is also for, and this particularly applies to the younger audience, is that what is the kind of activity which you're indulging in inside the metaverse. I think, within a couple of days launch, Meta themselves had come across incidents, and this had been flagged, that there were instances where an avatar of a particular individual ended up getting molested or harassed in a virtual world. Now, see, something like this, it's mentally very disturbing, because although it's not happening to a person in person, it is happening to a virtual representation of yourself. Now, that is something which has been taken very seriously by companies like the Meta as well, to say is that, look, we have to find a way to, obviously, because like Anthony said, you can't take the police and go and arrest somebody in the metaverse. The machinery for that just doesn't exist. So the kind of activities which all kind of age groups, but especially youngsters, are getting into, that for the time being can expose you to a very damaging set of behaviors or experiences. And therefore, as you maneuver through these platforms, caution also has to be taken as to where you're entering, what details you're providing. Many of these platforms are also, you would need to provide some amount of personal information. And that is again where we come back to security of your personal information. Where is this sitting? Where is it going? So as you can see, the gold standards with regard to, just like the way I would live as a normal human being, while metaverse is a great fun place to be, and someone might think well, I'm in a virtual world, there's really no risk. Actually, the risk is there in every possible way. And the last one is also to the younger age group, particularly children. You see, children today, like the way when we didn't have anything called virtual reality or augmented reality when we were growing up in school. But today, there is a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old in my house or in somebody else's house who understands these concepts, and not they understand, they experience it. So how you tackle some kind of child control in these kind of platforms is also very, very important.
Also, continuing with the misbehaving part. So let's say if avatar misbehaves in the metaverse, who is held to be liable? The avatar or the user behind the avatar or the developer of the metaverse?
Is there a question for me or Anthony?
Yeah, Mr. Ranveer Basu, it's for you.
Okay, so like I said, that's the first very, very difficult question which you just asked me, and I can only take an educated guess at that. So you see, let's kind of play this back to the closest parallel which we can get to is, let's say, a social media intermediary. Today, if I am an Amazon, or let's say I am an Instagram uh, or a YouTube channel, there could be a lot of good content, but there could be a lot of bad content as well. Now, say for example, there's obviously some there is obviously some company which is operating it. Okay, let's take for example Decentraland. Now, when Decentraland gets access to providing access to Decentraland in a particular country, let's say from India, I can access Decentraland. There are countries which don't allow access to some platforms, right? Just like we know, the Middle East doesn't allow access. Let's say, for example, to WhatsApp, it's very limited, right? Similarly, China may not allow access to some platforms. Similarly, countries. So there are countries who allow access to these platforms in a particular way. Now, if something were to happen, it is again very early stage to kind of determine who's going to be specifically liable. Okay, I can tell you for sure that, let's take for example that horrible example which we were talking about a while ago, where somebody goes and actually harasses an avatar on a metaverse. Today, if you go to a police and say this is what happened to me, you can just about imagine, he'd be sitting there scratching his head. You'd be wondering, what are you even talking about? Okay. When we go to enforce just basic trademark and copyright, the police rely very, very heavily on us as well as the legal external experts to take action. It's not that they don't want to, but their obvious or their the work which they are closer to is murder, rape, theft, and all the others. So today, when you come and say that there is a an action which needs to be taken, and by the way, it is not in the real world, it's in the virtual world. You can just about imagine where that conversation is going to go. But I'll tell you, and I'll pause here after this. I'll tell you what can happen, and we've seen the government step in. When the government notices that there are platforms which are out there where there is some kind of a havoc, an outbreak, they have stepped in to call upon the companies owning that platform. Okay, and you've seen this with Amazon, you've seen this with YouTube, WhatsApp, to put in place safeguards to ensure that this won't happen. And for the time being, I think that is where probably the enforcement action is going to go, where they can certainly pull up. And you see, you're not talking about 5,000 metaverse kind of companies. You're talking about a handful. And in that handful, you're also talking about a few which are very well renowned, right? So you have had instances where the government has stepped in, writing to these companies to say, either block your channel or you please control content. So for the time being, I think that is the way it's the enforcement is going to go, or the liability.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Basu. Dr. Pawan Dugal is with us. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Uh, Dr. Duggal, you can begin with your welcome speech, and we would love to hear your opinion on metaverse.
Thank you. Apologies for the delayed joining because I was in the court. I have a small presentation. Maybe I can share that with all of us, and we can begin together exploring what we look at the metaverse. So when I talk of legal considerations in metaverse, I find that we are in a new world altogether. Primarily because the legal frameworks, the legal principles pertaining to metaverse are only beginning to evolve as we talk. But developments have not stopped. Recently, a Colombian court has actually held its hearing in the metaverse. So imagine you do a virtual hearing to virtual avatars of lawyers, of litigants, and of judges. And therefore, you're going to come up with metaverse-based judgments. Now, that's a very interesting concept that while the metaverse avatar will be what will be seen, the mind will be not of the metaverse avatar, but will be of the real human judge who will be accessing the metaverse through his avatar. But then I find it's a global new paradigm. In India, Maruti Suzuki has already driven into the metaverse world. In China, we find that there's news that they are going to be launching the first national NFT marketplace. So it's a new world that's opening up new opportunities.
Is there anything to do with law here?
Well, I think, is there anything to do with law here? Yes, definitely. Because if you are going to look at these developments, you'll begin to start asking yourself questions as to what is the legal inputs here. That's the reason why the European Union is already beginning to now launch the Global Metaverse Regulation Initiative in 2023. Clearly, there are no global laws on metaverse. There are no national laws on metaverse. So in a scenario like this, it is very clear that the law has to evolve and the legal principles have to evolve. And you already now start finding some more elements on the horizon. For example, well, there's one news which says FTC could curb Microsoft's metaverse ambitions with Activision lawsuit. And of course, they talk of a valuation of the metaverse, which could reach up to $5 trillion by 2030. Now, when I compare that with cybercrime, I find the metaverse is still behind because in 2022, the world had lost more than $6 trillion thanks to cybercrime and cybersecurity breaches. But then how do we actually rein in the errant avatar? Can we send him to an avatar jail? Can we decommission him? Can we do other criminal consequences? Things are crystal clear, not very categorical in its evaluation, but clearly the need for legal frameworks have begun in a big manner. South Korea says, sorry, I'm not going to use my online gaming laws to deal with metaverse. I'm now going to come up with new legal frameworks. Though in Nigeria, they are again still toying up with using the gaming law in the context of the metaverse per se. So when I talk of the metaverse, it's again an imaginary place like the internet, except it's current world internet plus augmented reality and virtual reality. So if internet has got large number of legal issues, it's but natural to expect that metaverse is going to have much more larger and complex issues. First issue, is metaverse legal or is it illegal? Number two, is it real or is it an imaginary concept in cyberspace? And how does it actually differ with current world internet at large? Also, it's a virtual digital avatar-based ecosystem. So that brings us to the legalities of avatars. Can they be covered under the existing cyber legal frameworks? Well, traditionally, when I look at the legal frameworks across the world, most of the legal frameworks in cyberspace are governed by the UNCITRAL Model Law on Electronic Commerce. And by and large, they've granted legality to the electronic format. So to a large extent, it can be said that these laws could equally be made applicable in the context of metaverse. But most of the cyber laws don't deal with the legality of the digital avatars. Today, I'm not clear. Countries are not clear. Are digital avatars legal? Can they be considered as a legal entity? What kind of legal challenges are being thrown up in this regard? Can we say it's a legal person? can we say my avatar is my agent? Because there are two kinds of avatars. One is identical digital avatars, and one is non-identical digital avatars. And then can it be seen to be an extension of the legal personality of the creator or the person who's commissioned the creation of such an avatar? Then there was an important question prior to my presentation: who can be made liable for acts done in metaverse? Clearly, avatars can be made liable because they are incapable of being legally recognized now. But very quickly, the legal creators of avatars can be made liable. Similarly, the companies or the legal entities who are providing such services of avatars cannot also run away from legal liability. And therefore, the entire issue of intermediary liability has to be had a relook in the context of the metaverse per se. But now the problem is metaverse is getting joined with artificial intelligence. And that's now opening up new doors, because the combination of metaverse plus artificial intelligence can be a very unique and potent combination. But again, more legal issues, more legal challenges as we go forward. How about the entire issue of digital authentication of digital avatars? Can they digitally authenticate electronic data or records? And if so, would real-world digital signatures be applicable there? Or do you have to have separate electronic authentication for digital signatures? How do you provide for electronic authentication in the context of the metaverse? And how do you also ensure that you're able to pierce the anonymity wheel on the metaverse when you go forward? Also, metaverse is now the new next frontier of crime. Metaverse crime is emerging by leaps and bounds. And these crimes are being committed not just by digital avatars, but also by legal entities using digital avatars. So recently, one of our clients' female avatar got digitally molested and raped on the metaverse. And there was some issue because the client talks about digital rape. But the problem is the law has still not reached up to the point where it can talk in terms of recognizing digital rape. Yes, you can talk of tampering with electronic records, but whether you want to talk of digital rape is something that the law has to wait on for. Similarly, what about the virtual violence that's going to be engaged in by these digital avatars? What about virtual sexual harassment in metaverse? These are creating huge number of big legal challenges. Of course, you can also see a lot of virtual reality defamation in metaverse emerging. Why? Because your avatar can be defamed in the metaverse and beyond. You can be defamed by attacking on your avatar by other metaverse stakeholders. How do you deal with it? And then who gets defamed on the metaverse? Is it you? Is it your digital avatar? Or is it someone else? It's like that fundamental question. A couple got actually married on the metaverse in the first half of 2022 in the US. Now, this was widely reported, but the fundamental legal question became even more complex. Who got married on the metaverse? Was it people? Was it avatars? If it was a real marriage of avatars, then it's not yet legal because the law does not recognize the marriage of avatars. If it was individuals who are getting married on avatar-based metaverse, then also there's a problem because they themselves didn't get married along with each other, but their avatars got married. So we have these huge problems. So can I actually say that my avatar is my extension of my legal personality? And if a legal harm is committed to avatar, it's but natural to expect that the harm would automatically be transferred upon me as a legal entity. And then you have this problem of ownership of virtual reality software, and your virtual lands. You are owning it. Who's owning it? Is it your avatar owning it? Is it you owning it? How do you enforce your legal rights in the context of the metaverse per se, in terms of ownership? But I think the fundamental issue pertains to cybersecurity on the metaverse. We have still not begun to start focusing on protection and the preservation of cybersecurity, because cybersecurity breaches are coming left, right, and center on the metaverse. And if you're not going to be careful, these cybersecurity breaches could have a humongous impact upon the further growth and evolution of metaverse. No wonder cyber attacks are now increasingly being focused on the metaverse per se. I think the time has come where globally stakeholders have to join hands together to define clearly and with clarity the rights, duties, and responsibilities of metaverse stakeholders in the course of, in the context of cybersecurity per se. Because you can't say on the metaverse, it's the government's responsibility for making the metaverse secure. Sorry, it's something that you are creating. You are creating your avatar. You can't run away from your responsibility vis-a-vis cybersecurity. But unfortunately, we find not much work has been happening in this regard. The reason for this is that there is a huge international vacuum on cybersecurity law. There's no cybersecurity law at a global level. So different countries have said, no problem, let's start coming up with our own national specific cybersecurity legal frameworks and laws. Countries have come up with a huge list of national cybersecurity laws. The leader, of course, is China. Then you have Russia, Vietnam, Thailand, Australia, Singapore, Zimbabwe, Macau, Germany, and the like. And when I look at these national cybersecurity laws, I don't find any specific reference to metaverse per se. Yes, they broadly talk about cybersecurity of computer resources, but it does not necessarily only talk of metaverse-based cybersecurity. And what happens now in the event there's a metaverse-based ransomware attack? So your digital avatar tends to get hacked, and then it's attacked by a ransomware attack. It looks right now impossible or highly remote, but that's now the new direction where we'll have to apply our minds as we go forward. Further, I think you'll have to come up with added responsibility on cybersecurity for metaverse ecosystem stakeholders. And in the event there's a breach of cybersecurity on the metaverse, you will have to also stipulate the effective remedies that are going to be made applicable to stakeholders in this regard. And therefore, I believe there will be a need for coming up with appropriate changes in national cybersecurity legal frameworks so that we can make them specifically applicable in the context of the metaverse per se. Also, there are going to be a large number of contracts on the metaverse. So is your metaverse contract legal? And if so, can it be upheld in a court of law? Because ultimately it's you through your digital avatar who's entering into a metaverse contract. And what happens if there's this metaverse contract does not tend to get obeyed or complied with by the metaverse stakeholders? So a lot of new complications as we go forward. Because ultimately this metaverse contract will be between two metaverse avatars. So till such time the law does not go ahead and legally recognize metaverse avatars, the context of legal recognition and support to metaverse contracts itself is going to create huge number of practical problems. Also in the metaverse, we are already in the data economy age. We are all going to be generating humongous volumes of data. Who will be the owner of the data that they'll be generating? Is it logical to expect that I have my digital avatar on the metaverse? So the data that gets generated by the digital avatar is automatically my property? Or is it going to be the property of the company that's created the digital avatar? Or would it be the legal entity, the concerned company, who's providing the services of the digital avatar? Things like these are going to be hugely problematic because this data is going to become very valuable. Already we are in the data economy age, and therefore this control on data on the metaverse will be something that will have to be legally stipulated as we go forward. Therefore, the entire issue of data protection on the metaverse assumes far more significance. Yes, I can definitely say that the existing world laws on data protection, like the General Data Protection Regulation of the European Union, could be made directly applicable to metaverse. Because at the end of the day, whether you're dealing with data in the physical world, in the electronic form, or in the metaverse, you would still be covered under the existing legal frameworks. But what happens to this large majority of countries who don't have a dedicated data protection law? For example, even India, this afternoon when we talk, does not have any dedicated law on data protection, nor a law on data privacy. So clearly, this brings us to another bigger issue. How do we deal with protection of privacy, both personal privacy and data privacy, in the context of the metaverse per se? Because there'll be long period when we will be logged in onto the metaverse. There's one survey that says that by the end of 2026, we'll all be spending a couple of hours every day on the metaverse. Now, if that be the case, and with long periods of logging in, there'll be huge concerns on how I protect my privacy as an individual, both my data privacy and also my personal privacy, which will have an intrinsic connection with the way how my digital avatar is actually working and going forward. I think liability issues will be the most significant to be legally addressed, because right now, the world is only straddling with the intermediary liabilities under existing legal frameworks. In America, you still have Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, but in countries like India, you have Section 79 of the Information Technology Act 2000, which by and large makes them liable for third-party data or information made available. In certain conditions, they're not liable, and of course, some statutory exemption from legal liability is also granted. Can we replicate this intermediary liability model in the context of the metaverse? I think it's an interesting question that we must discuss further, because there's going to be huge problems if I'm going to do a cut, copy, paste of my existing intermediary legal frameworks in the context of metaverse per se. But then how do I define the negligence liability or other liability or strict liability in the context of the metaverse standpoint? How about vicarious liability, contributing liability on the metaverse? And can we straddle the metaverse service providers with these kinds of liabilities? Looks logical, looks exciting, and on a theoretical standpoint, but practically speaking, is likely to give forward huge number of legal issues and challenges as we go forward. And of course, metaverse jurisdiction is going to be a huge problem. When you access the metaverse, it's an imaginary space, but it's accessible to anywhere by anyone who just have an access to some computer resources. So in the event an activity takes place in metaverse, which countries' laws will be made applicable? That's a fundamental question. Further, what kind of courts will assume jurisdiction in the event of a metaverse contract or a metaverse dispute? And my digital avatar, maybe I upload it from a location in India, it ultimately does some activity in the metaverse, which actually causes a legal injury to somebody, maybe in, say, the European Union. In a scenario like that, the fundamental question will be who all can be made legally responsible. Those are fundamental questions that we have yet to start answering as we go forward. Look, in the last more than 3 decades, the internet jurisdiction has still got more complex, and we still don't have unanimity at a global level. I think it's going to take an equally long period of time for the issues pertaining to metaverse jurisdiction to be crystal clearly evolved as we go forward. Then how do I attribute legally an activity done in metaverse to a particular metaverse actor? What are the foundational legal principles that one will work in this regard? And how do you legally prove the attribution of the said metaverse act to the said metaverse actors? I think that's one area that a lot of work will have to be required in terms of legal frameworks, in terms of legal principles. Also, I think on metaverse, we'll see a lot of content licensing issues. Some of them would already be covered as part of the intellectual property rights issues. Content licensing is going to be important. But metaverse reputation will also now begin to start throwing up new challenges. I will assume that I will have a certain reputation on the metaverse. And if any activity is done to cause legal injury to my metaverse reputation, then lo and behold, it throws up new legal frame issues. Well, traditional laws on defamation can be made applicable, but whether that will be completely applicable or effective in the context of metaverse are important issues that we have to wait and watch. Also, when you adopt these non-fungible tokens in the metaverse, there are more legal issues waiting for you. So when China is now coming up with the national NFT marketplace, you already are beginning to start dealing on a hands-on basis with these legal issues. Further, I'm going to see a very huge culmination, a combination of both metaverse and gaming. So therefore, metaverse gaming is going to get huge. It's going to have a huge detrimental impact upon the minds of children. Maybe addictive elements of these games could be some elements where the legal frameworks would have to jump in. Also, there's also a possibility that what you do online in the metaverse ecosystem could ultimately end up giving you or providing you physical injury in the physical world. And therefore, the interconnection between metaverse and the physical world and the connecting legal injury issues and legal harm issues will also have to be specifically addressed, apart from addressing the mental health issues and the entire issue of now digital sovereignty. Now, you think digital sovereignty is something that's got no connection with metaverse? Oh, sorry. If now a Colombian court or a judge is already beginning to start hearing matters in the metaverse, countries would now want their sovereign interests in metaverse to be adequately protected. And for that, there are going to be chances that these countries are going to keep on expanding like elastic the existing concept of cyber sovereignty, to say that countries' cyber sovereignty or digital sovereignty is going to go ahead and include all elements of metaverse as well. That's going to start bringing up far more new issues. Further, how do we tax legally the transactions on the metaverse? Because ultimately, metaverse will be generating a lot of commerce. And then what will be the activities on the metaverse where we will be able to tax? Where will be the taxable entities? What kind of a tax regime is going to be applicable? Those are fundamental questions that we have still not begun to start getting addressed. And I think it's the marriage of metaverse with emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and blockchain that's going to throw up yet a new Pandora's box of legalities and legal issues that will have to be appropriately addressed as we go forward. Because, well, as far as artificial intelligence is concerned, legal frameworks are in the process of evolution. Whether these said legal frameworks can be directly made applicable in the context of use of AI on the metaverse, or whether the conjunction of metaverse and AI could bring in the need for new legal approaches, those are important issues that we'll have to specifically address. Also, the marriage between IoT and metaverse is going to be a very exciting marriage, but is likely to face a large number of legal issues and challenges as we go forward. And I think it's the legal liability should the cybersecurity of the metaverse be impacted or prejudicially impacted by an IoT device. Those are fundamentally fascinating questions which will now go ahead and propel the growth of new legal frameworks and principles pertaining to metaverse. And now with the digital twins coming in, imagine me creating a digital twin of my virtual land and then replicating the same on the metaverse in order to get more clarity. But then the connected issues of the interconnection between digital twins and metaverse is also something very interesting that we'll have to deal with. Well, metaverse is going to be all about digital humans because digital avatars are digital humans. And therefore, the need for legally regulating digital humans is already emerging. Already the Beijing municipality has now come up with a 4-year plan by means of which it's proposing to regulate digital humans. It's not your digital avatars, but it's going to be much beyond. It's not just the Thanos of your world. It's not the avatar films, characters which will be at stake. It'll be virtually the entire digital avatar ecosystem, which will begin to start throwing new digital human-related challenges. And now with ChatGPT coming in, you have this huge problem. New challenges, but bigger problems because ChatGPT is now going to be queried as to what all applications can be done. In this case, Well, a founder of a company said that you will soon be able to talk to your dead mom on the metaverse thanks to ChatGPT. So the use or misuse of ChatGPT for breaching the cybersecurity of metaverse, or for enhancing the quantum of metaverse crimes is something that's going to become extremely significant in the coming times. And I think that'll also have to be appropriately addressed. So I think it's an exciting time. There's a lot of development happening on the metaverse, but then, sorry, the legal frameworks on metaverse need to strictly be made more evolved as we actually go forward. Why? Because we're already entering into a new cyber age. The coming of COVID-19 has actually resulted into the world entering into a new cyber world order. And in this new cyber world order, metaverse is going to play a very important role. Metaverse cannot be a wild, wild west. It'll have to be regulated. We'll have to learn from the learnings of our experiences while regulating the cyberspace, and quickly start replicating the same in the context of metaverse at large. And that's the reason why there's a need for more capacity building. We've created a platform called cyberlawuniversity.com, where I'm offering about 37 online courses on cyber law, cybercrime, cybersecurity, including a course on metaverse and legalities. Sorry. So I think we'll have to create more capacity building, more awareness as we go forward. Well, the courses are growing, the number of users are growing, but I think we need to do far more. And therefore, programs like these assume massive significance. I'd like to, just conclude by saying it's a fascinating time, but a lot of development has yet to take place as far as metaverse law is concerned. Thanks, and with that, over to you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, Dr. Duggal. My question to Mr. Anthony would be, as we saw in the PPT, avatars form a part of metaverse. How are they protected under the IPR laws? Do same IPR laws apply to metaverse as in real life?
If you're asking me how currently it is being protected, yes, if you're looking into I'll talk by concept by concept, looking into each and every kind of intellectual property rights. So if you're looking into the trademark laws, you can see a lot of parties, even like a lot of countries have allowed trademarks being registered specifically for metaverse. I'm not talking about like a Western principle. Even in India, if you're looking into, there are a lot of trademarks being registered for the metaverse focused as well as metaverse business and everything. In relation to the copyright law, so far I think it is like how we do for a normal kind of any kind of artistic work, a copyright being protected. The avatars and everything can be protected in the similar manner. But to be very specific, I would like to mention about this. What European Union IPO is doing. They are coming up with new regulations, change, policy changes, and everything. A couple of weeks they have their post in their LinkedIn page, which stated that they are going to change their design laws specifically in order to incorporate the needs of metaverse. Because as per the current laws, they are not able to like protect or process the applications. So they might be having more inclusive languages. I will suggest it's like meta-inclusive laws to protect their rights and everything. So in the aspect of that copyright and designs law, I mean, as of now, the current law can to a certain extent protect. Well, Mr. Basu was like speaking about a couple of minutes ago. If you're looking into a picture that can be protected by copyright law. If you are listening to a jingle, you can protect it by copyright law. The underlying technology can be protected by the patent also. In fact, there are a lot of application, not which is not recent, because a lot of people think that this is a recent development. People didn't know about it. You go to patent scope and do a search for the metaverse. Even from 2008 onwards, there have been technology in relation to metaverse having been granted for patent protection and everything. Similarly, designs law also, if you are looking to my extent, there are 2 or 3 designs protection specifically in relation to metaverse granted by China that allows the design protection of the avatars. Not it was in relation to the blockchain panel, but that can be similarly interpreted for the avatars as well. So yes, to a certain extent, current laws will help us to protect. In fact, to a greater extent, if you're looking from the commercial perspective, the current laws will help us. But as Dr. Dugal correctly pointed out, since there needs a lot of clarity on how the policymakers are going to interpret all these things, we have to see in the next days how the policymakers want to like protect these rights and everything when it comes to commerce.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Also, I would like to ask one more question to Mr. Anthony. Trademarks are granted on a territorial basis, and hence trademark obtained in India would be only afford legal protection in India. So, considering the universal nature and blurring the territorial boundaries nature of the metaverse, how efficiently can policies to prevent such infringement be prepared?
Well, when you're asking the question of enforcement of rights, yes, you have to first ask the question of jurisdiction and everything. As Dr. Dugal correctly pointed out, this jurisdiction question is not having a clear answer as of now. Where to go, who to enforce when you are having a person who is sitting in India having an issue with a person in somewhere, let's say Australia or UK, which forum to approach and what are the laws to be applicable to those parties is still a serious question where it doesn't have a clear answer. Because if you're looking into platforms, let's say like Decentraland or Roblox, you look into the terms and conditions that they are asking the person who is joining the platform to look into. They say that like if there is an issue, then you have to mandatorily first submit to an arbitrator. But whether that mandatory submission is right under law, whether if both the parties don't have an option of seeking a court, is it okay now? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
So yeah, what I'm saying that the parties don't have a choice to make their which forum, because the essence of arbitration comes also in relation to the choice of forum and everything. The choice of seat, venue, all these things comes into the place. But Decentraland is asking you mandatorily go for like a settlement through arbitration, and if that not happens, they are saying that you approach a court in Panama. So a person who is sitting in India and having an issue with a Australian citizen has to now approach a Panamanian court to resolve their issues. That creates a little bit. I mean, it creates a lot of issues because I won't be able to like exercise any of my rights, or I won't be able to like clear my issues if these platforms are like being acting like this. So, Dr. Duppel clearly pointed out the intermediary liability that has to be grown to a next level, because cut copy paste, as he clearly stated, cut copy paste of what we have today to a metaverse platform is not going to give us any answer. It has to be uh, developed in a greater manner. For now, what I can, I mean, to a great extent, I won't say I will rely upon, but the only guidance we can take is from the Delhi High Court's decision in Tata versus Hakuna Matata. So what the court has actually looked into, even not having what the court actually stated is that even the availability of a particular website in a particular jurisdiction comes into the place, then court may exercise some kind of control over those and can be tried in an Indian court or something. But that is again subject to interpretation of different courts, how they are being considered. Even there are treaties between different countries which comes into place where you are choosing the jurisdiction and everything. So this territoriality blurring of metaverse is a big issue, but if somehow you can like present before the court that even if it is not clear, but the court still have some jurisdiction, maybe some court listen, but I can't guarantee for that.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Dr. Pawan Duggal, the next question is for you. How extensive are IT laws in India to include issues in metaverse?
In India, the Information Technology Act 2000 is our only mother legislation for everything to deal with electronic format. So it is a law that's effectively about 22 years old. It's a law that was never formulated keeping in mind the metaverse, because the metaverse is a recent phenomenon. But having said that, because this is the mother legislation that India has, and it deals extensively with use of computers, computer systems, computer networks, computer resources, communication devices, as also data and information in the electronic form, you can definitely say that some elements of the IT Act are going to be made applicable in the context of the metaverse. For example, Section 4 of the IT Act grants legality to the electronic format. So this very electronic format, when used in the context of metaverse, is going to be automatically covered under the ambit of Section 4 of the Information Technology Act 2000. Similarly, the entire issue of electronic authentication in the context of the digital ecosystem under Section 5 of the IT Act could also be made applicable to the metaverse, but there are going to be problems. A lot of cybercrimes are defined under Chapter Roman 11 of the IT Act, and some of the broad, generic digital cybercrimes detailed therein could be made applicable in the context of metaverse, but not everything is going to be made applicable as it is. We will have to have a more customized solution and approach, and you'll have to have now new legal frameworks to deal with metaverse. You have to quickly realize that this is like just the foundation pillars, which has been provided by the IT Act. Now, on top of it, various new buildings are going to be built up. So we'll have to create one particular legal structure for metaverse, yet another for artificial intelligence, yet another for Internet of Things and emerging technologies. So I think initially we could get some kind of a legal support from some of the provisions and the principles that are governed under or that are elaborated under the Information Technology Act 2000. But if you're expecting the IT Act 2000 to be your firefighting suit for fighting all fires on the metaverse, then you'll quickly realize it's a deficient firefighting suit. It was never created keeping in mind the metaverse, and it does not have adequate provisions to deal with all the legal challenges that metaverse as a paradigm is bringing to throw up. India will very quickly have to come up with new enabling legal frameworks to deal with metaverse that will have to be in addition to what the legal frameworks that have already been provided under the Information Technology Act 2000. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, sir. So the next question is a legal persona necessary to make avatars responsible for their actions in metaverse? And what kind of standards and criteria need to be in place to distinguish between a legal avatar and the true legal person who operates that avatar?
First and foremost, we need to get a fundamental clarity on the legal concepts. There's nothing like a concept of a legal avatar. Because the moment you talk of a legal avatar, it automatically will have a corollary that there will be an illegal avatar. Now, therefore, you can talk of an avatar recognized by law versus avatar which is not recognized by law. That to be one particular way going forward. But then the problem is you cannot send the avatar to jail. You have this talk of this now, avatar jail, but that's something like putting your avatar in a particular location on the metaverse, immobilizing the same, or even decommissioning the same. But whether that will be effective is something that only time will be able to tell. You will have to provide some kind of a legal basis for the actions of avatars. You also have to stipulate the legal principles for identifying the legal liability of avatars. You can't say that metaverse will be the wild, wild west. We will all continue to make on having our avatars. And these avatars will be in a position to do all kinds of legal, illegal, ultra-legal, or anti-national activities, and yet they will not be governed by law. Sorry. You'll have to come up with legal frameworks. So therefore, legal liability will be an important issue. Because if you are able to solve that jigsaw puzzle, then you are able to put a lot of sanity and legal order in the entire metaverse per se. I think three stakeholders have to be made an integral part of the legal liability process. When I talk of a legal liability of an avatar, number one is the person who's the actual owner or creator of the avatar. Because when you are the owner of the avatar, you cannot escape liability. Number two, it will have to be the coder who's actually coded or created that digital avatar. because he can either have done it on its own, or he may be commissioned to do the same, or he may have done and then subsequently sold it to another person. Either way, since it's your creation, you can't say that I did not even adhere to basic minimum parameters of due diligence when I was creating the avatar. And the third could be the company that's providing you services for maintenance and running of your avatars, because the coder is going to code it and give it to you once and for all and forget about it and move forward. But there'll be now companies who will be offering you regular monthly services. These are like annual maintenance contracts where they'll be taking care of your digital avatar, make sure it's running, it's doing its various activities. For that, they'll be charging you. Now, those kinds of stakeholders can also be made responsible for the avatar and its activities. Then it begin to start giving sanity from a legal standpoint to this entire issue of intermediaries. Most of the countries are still going to see the entire issue of liability of avatars from the legal liability of intermediaries. Ultimately, intermediary is a network service provider. Can I say my avatar is a network service provider? Well, in a broad sense, yes, because through my digital avatar, I'm providing some services, whether it's of education, of creating more content, whether it's the ability to enter into metaverse contracts. So I'm effectively providing various network services on the metaverse through my metaverse avatar. That being so, the existing principles of intermediary liability could be invoked by countries. But if you're going to invoke Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of the US as it is, then you're going to create a huge problem, because the historical context and the timing of that legislation is now long past. Today, the growing realization is that service providers will have to be increasingly made responsible for activities on their platforms, primarily to ensure that these platforms are not misused for a variety of criminal or illegal purposes. But ultimately, it's something that will have to be specifically answered by the lawmakers of each specific jurisdiction. We have no international metaverse law, and there is not currently likely to be a metaverse law at the international level. But yes, countries will come up with their own national laws. But it'll be interesting to see how they will be required to customize their existing actual world legal liability provisions vis-a-vis intermediary liability in the context of its applicability to the metaverse at large. But also, a very interesting area. No final jury out yet, but yes, a lot of new challenges, a lot of new issues, and also the opportunity to create new legal jurisprudence as far as metaverse is concerned. I hope that answers that question. Thanks.
Yes, sir. So this would be the last question from my side. Then we'll begin with the Q&A session. And it is the common for both. Mr. Anthony, you may go first. So the question is, what could be the potential issues that a lawyer could be presented with once metaverse become the mainstream? And what are some important loopholes or hotspots for legal intervention in the regulation of metaverse as it is today? And how would they be resolved with its development in future?
Well, from a lawyer's perspective, if you're looking into how it is that like, let's say I advise on a like regular basis on like companies which are like looking into all this Web3 activities, including the NFTs, cryptos, and everything. So when they ask me a question of how your country is treating all these things, what is the possibility of obtaining a rights or like enforcing the rights? I can't give a clear answer to them. I have to say that like a set of laws gives me this kind of answers, as another set of laws is giving me a set of answers. Now, when it goes back to the client, they are still confused which is the best set of law they should adopt. If because there is no industry standard on what are the laws that can be like explained or like implemented in the best manner. So from a lawyer's point of view, it is hard for me to like give answers to my client because there is no per se clear laws that comes into the place, and sometimes my understanding and of the client's particular let's say the technology that they have developed and everything in combination with the law, since there is no particular standard, may not be giving the best results to the client. So having a standard is the like the first and foremost thing that has to be like there because a lot of issues can be resolved if there is like standards. Let's say there is a standard setting organization which comes into the place and they are saying that like if you're working in a particular metaverse, you have to follow X, Y, Z standards. Let's say if we were talking a lot about like having the sexual offenses that is being committed in the metaverse. So if the standard setting organization come and put up a standard that like no such acts can be done by an avatar in a metaverse, maybe to a certain extent, a lot of issues can be stopped. So like from a lawyer's point of view, that is one thing that comes into the place. And secondly, when it comes to the enforcement, which I like mentioned a little bit earlier, that when it comes to the decentralization and everything, there are no per se authorities that we can approach to like help us with like enforcement of all these things when it comes to the decentralized domain names or decentralized NFTs or or something like that. We have to go behind, we have to chase these parties to a great extent. And it is at the end of the day, the party's choice, like the service provider's choice to follow it or not, because they have multiple maybe VPNs or something like that. If one country is restricting them in one manner, they can still access that country in another manner. So it 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 is hard from a lawyer's point of view to from a like a advisory level as well as an enforcement level to give best options for the client. To answer this, maybe one thing that has to be coming in is like a technological advancement where the where even if there is a decentralization, but some authorities or countries can like have certain control as a regulatory body, which ensures that these are not misutilized or they are not going to affect the entire society in real life or something like that. For example, maybe a couple of years back, of you must have heard about a game called Blue Whale, where people were gaming, having it in the mobile phone, and it ended up killing a lot of people in the real life. So such kind of situation when it comes into the market, there should be some authority that help us to like regulate all these things. And even from a intellectual property perspective, for example, if you are finding a counterfeit out in the market, the court can like seize it, they can like decommission it, they can destroy it, all these things. But let's say in the case of an NFT, there is nothing like a like seizing of NFT or anything. The only options that currently in the technology available is NFT burning, which is sending back to a unknown address, which again is not feasible at all of the time because the policymakers don't understand what how this is implemented, and not everyone is so technology advanced. So maybe the advancement of technology, proper knowledge, standard setting organizations, that can be the thing when a lawyer comes into the market and advises his client, that is going to help us to develop a better metaverse related environment.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Duggal?
Yes, sir. I think lawyers are going to see a new field of opportunity as far as metaverse is going to be concerned. So we have cyber lawyers. Very soon, as metaverse gets more central as part of our lives, we should be seeing metaverse lawyers. Already, it's a very strange world. A Colombian judge has already used a chat GPT for the purposes of delivering a judgment. A Colombian court has held its first hearing in the metaverse. So we are going to be seeing cases or instances where metaverse hearings are going to take place, metaverse court presences are going to take place. That will require metaverse conversant lawyers. These could be actual world lawyers, these could be cyber lawyers, or these could be specific specialized metaverse lawyers who are going to be looking at these things. Also, as the economic potential of metaverse is consistently growing, we're going to see now metaverse disputes happening big time. And these will require all the more new sets of lawyers. So all said and done, I think for them, from the legal standpoint, from the lawyer standpoint, metaverse is going to be a money churner. It's going to generate new opportunities, new clients, new business prospects, and more significantly, lawyers will also have an ability to contribute to the evolving legal jurisprudence on. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. To now begin with the Q&A session, I would request attendees to put their question in chat box if they have any. Attendees, please ask the questions regarding metaverse if you have any.
I think there is one question which states that as we know that with the emergence of new developments in metaverse, more and more people will shift towards it. This is also pertaining to a shift of a lot of legal procedures in metaverse. How can we expect these legal procedures to change, and what are the difficulties we might face in implementing them? Um, I think I'll take a guess on that. See, when it comes to the Web3 and how the law can utilize is what you can see is something nowadays, which is a reality, not something that is going to happen in future, is something known as blockchain arbitration. You look into the Chinese internet code, they have a specific section for the blockchain arbitration where the arbitration procedures or the document collection, evidence submission, everything happens through the blockchain. This is a helpful manner of doing it because as people say it, even though I don't completely believe it, that blockchain are tamper proof. To a great extent, they are not like able to be like replaced or tampered. The evidence once there, everyone has to admit that it is there and it is correct and everything. So using those kind of technology may like a speed up the matters, b help us to give better output in decisions and everything. And again, looking into the way that Dr. Dougal just pointed about the Colombian court, which has conducted the first hearing in the metaverse, I urge all of you. It's available in YouTube. If anyone wants the link, they can just check in my LinkedIn page. I have also shared the actual hearing that happened in the metaverse in the Colombian court. So these kind of things, when it is adopted, having knowledge of how these things work, how the blockchain arbitration take place, because most of the time what people is not understanding is how this basic technology works and everything. So if you they don't know, I don't think they will be, not even the parties but even the courts or the judicial authorities will be able to take a benefit out of it. So having basic knowledge is one thing, in my opinion, that is required at this particular time.
Participants, if there is no more question, I would like to begin with my vote of thanks.
There is another question by Vaishali. She has asked, who is responsible for bringing changes in the present law scenario and incorporate metaverse? Is it the legislature or the judiciary which should take steps in this direction? So,
well, I think it's very clear. It has to be the executive which is to take appropriate steps. It's not the work of the judiciary to go ahead and create new law. It's the work of the judiciary to interpret existing law. And therefore, the onus will be on the governments of the world to come up with the strong enabling legal frameworks. We should not overkill. Over legislation and over regulation has to be studiously avoided. It has to be minimal enablement, minimal regulation. That has to be the mantra for various stakeholders as we go forward. But ultimately, it will also be dependent upon the political will of the concerned governments as to whether they would want to take this as a priority and whether they would want to come up with legal frameworks in this regard. Thanks.
There is another question. Sir, how would law manage the digital assets such as security of asset, for example, cryptocurrency? Mr. Anthony, would you like to answer that?
See, if you are asking about the cryptocurrency, maybe in India there is no per se straitjacket legal framework that comes into the place. There are a lot of laws that can be like looked into one by one. For example, recently our income tax law has been amended to include all these virtual digital assets into the income tax act for the taxation purposes and everything, which give us an understanding that this can be treated something like a property. So if you're looking into the amendment, it clearly states that the income and the benefits out of it can be considered as something similar to a property. So one way of looking out of it is that. The other way may be the consumer protection rules that recently came out because it says that like anything that can be sold in the digital market may be regulated by these rules in India. So, but again, that consider what the consideration has to be coming into whether we, when we are making this transaction and everything, are we transferring the underlying property or are we just making a token of this underlying property? Because these NFTs and everything, most of the time when they work with the smart contracts and DAOs, the person who is getting the token might not be at the end of the day getting any legal right over the underlying property, or let's say an artwork, or let's say there is a music. He might not be getting any particular rights or IP rights on that particular thing. He might be getting a token that is having that a cover of that particular thing. So it is difficult as of now to give a clear answer in relation to that. The policy has to change. There should be clear guidelines on how to use it and everything. Maybe court can, in certain points, if the question comes in front of the court, let's say there was a case in Delhi High Court in relation to the KuCoins, which talk about the cryptocurrency and the trademark and everything. So the court injuncted on another party for like having a trademark in relation to cryptocurrency which the KuCoin had. So that kind of situations may help us to like give some answers, but for a solid answer, we have to have a better laws. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to begin with my vote of thanks. On behalf of SPIL Mumbai, I would like to thank all the panelists, Dr. Pawan Duggal, Mr. Alvin Antony, Mr. Ranbir Basu, for this fantastic discussion and sparing their valuable time and making this event a success. Without your generosity, knowledge, and patience, this event wouldn't have been possible. And I believe I can say this on behalf of all the attendees that your wonderful and insightful points are really appreciated and would help us to better understand this upcoming concept of metaverse and its challenges. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And with this, we come to an end of this panel discussion. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.